Stacy?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to be in and out here for. Yes, did you hear me?
Oh, now you're back.
Hang on. Okay. I can't even see this.
Are you there? Mr. Barton?
Oh, fine. Yeah.
He's trying to make something.
You have to push something to
You're on.
I am on.
All right, we're going to go ahead and have Stacy run the meeting.
Did they call my name?
Yeah, Melody Rich said that he's going to be in and out. So yeah,
Stacy, all right. Stacy,
Well,
go ahead.
I would like to call the June 4th, 2020 Planning and Zoning meeting to order. First item on the agenda would be, this is my first time. You're gonna have to help me out here. I'm sorry.
We've got the public hearing for Orange Blossom Estates, PUD 67, and I believe Neil is going to talk
Now,
about
what do
that.
I do once I call this number?
Okay.
All right.
So first is the Orange Blossom Estates.
You got it.
7 hearings.
I didn't.
All right. Good evening, Planning and Zoning Commission. For your consideration tonight for the first public hearing, we ask for the review of a PUD application for Orange Blossom Estates located at 2007 North Highway 47. After the ordinance of the City of Warrenton be made part of the record by
North
reference,
Highway 47.
a comprehensive plan of the City of Warrenton be made part of the record by reference, and the packet shown as PUD 67 on the agenda be made part of the record by reference, which includes the publication notice of tonight's public hearing that was posted in the Warren County Record.
Okay, he's got a,
Then you got to put that an ID number in there.
but you have to have this Zoom.
Right.
I've got a certain
For the
app to get
second
into,
hearing,
and I don't have that.
we ask for your consideration for
I don't
zone
like
change request
Go to apps.
for the property located at North Service Road and Highway AA, currently zoned M1. Ask for the ordinance of the City of Warrenton be made part of the record by reference, the comprehensive plan of the City of Warrenton be made part of the record by reference, and finally, the packet shown as ZC 61 on the agenda be made part of the record by reference, which includes the publication notice of tonight's public hearing that was posted in the Warren County Record. For the third and final hearing, we ask for the review of a PUD for Creekside Apartments to be located at the North Service Road and Highway AA. I ask that the ordinance of the City of Warrenton be made part of the record by reference, the comprehensive plan of the City of Warrenton be made part of the record by reference, and finally, the packet shown as PUD-68 on the agenda be made part of the record by reference, which includes the publication notice of tonight's public hearing that was posted in the Warren County Record. Chris Wolf with Wunderlich Surveying and Engineering is here with us, so he will be able to answer any questions that we have later on.
My hearing is so bad, I can't.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so now we will open the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And the first item will be that we approve the minutes from the March 5th, 2020 meeting.
I want to, we vote from here?
It's a second. It's a
I
second.
move we accept the meeting minutes as provided.
Second.
Hold on just a second, everybody. The people that are the audience that
Okay,
is,
somebody's too close to a microphone.
yeah, that is participating in the meeting, could you please stay quiet during this part? Thank you.
Melody, I'd suggest we should have them mute their microphones right now. If they're not on the Planning and Zoning Commission, you can go ahead and do that for us. That should help with some of the feedback. All right, go ahead.
All right, so
somebody needs to be muted, or somebody's watching it on, listening to it on 2 different devices.
It's got to be that because I don't see any additional numbers that I need.
It's probably two different devices. So if you're dialed in, then you should be muted on the Zoom or vice versa.
Correct. There we go. I think we're good.
Okay. So we had a motion by Mr. Taylor and a second by, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the second,
Jason Cullum.
Mr. Cullum, to approve the March 5th, 2020 meeting minutes. Roll call vote would be Mr. Deach. Are you with us right now?
I can see you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Approve the minutes? Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Cullum?
Abstain, I was absent.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Blondin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper is absent. Mr. Priest is absent. Mr. Holt? Mr. Holt? Is Mr. Holt there?
He said he gave thumbs up. I think he's having some mic issues. There you go.
All right. Mr. Taylor?
He's on the internet.
Yes.
Mr. Cullum is absent. And Mr. Priest is absent. And Mr. Cooper, did we ever get a hold of Mr. Cooper? I don't think he made it on. So, okay. Oh, there he is. Mr. Cooper?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Not here.
So do you approve the minutes from March 5th, 2020?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Stacy, we can move
All
on.
right. Second item is the Orange Blossom Estates PUD 67. Whoever is here to speak on behalf of that.
Well, I'll start this off. So on May 1st, a request was filed for the approval of a planned unit development located at Orange Blossom Estates, 2007 North Highway 47, to be divided into 2 lots. The applicant, Ed Schmelz, is requesting to separate the PUD in order to refinance the development. The original Orange Blossom Estates PUD required approval before you could re-subdivide. So the original covenants, it stated that it required approval before we could subdivide this. Ed or Mr. Wolf, if you have any more comments. Oh.
You guys are muted.
Not looking to change anything from the existing PUD. We're just splitting it into 2 separate PUDs. Phase 1 is almost complete here in about the next 30 to 45 days. And with the interest rate market we're in right now, I was wanting to get that first phase refinanced before we start on phase 2. So nothing will change from the original PUD that we had approved a year or so ago.
So if I can make a couple of comments, Neil and I reviewed this earlier today. Neil, I know you pulled the ordinance. I think that there was a couple of conditions that was put on the original ordinance, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so he'll go through those here in a moment, that what's in the ordinance, you can get prepared for that. I guess the biggest concern, I think, from a staff level, Ed, is, I understand you're not going to change anything. It's all the same amenities, but, we have to approve your covenants and restrictions, obviously, again, which I assume are going to be the same. What mechanism are you going to propose to put in place so this property can't be subdivided so the amenities are accessible by all parties? Because I assume they'll be under common ownership, correct?
Correct. They will always remain common ownership. And is that something we can put in our deed restrictions?
Well, the problem is I don't know what mechanism, that's probably from my concern in reviewing this is, you want the amenities available to everybody that lives there. So I think we're probably going to have to seek some legal counsel to figure out how to make it so if there's 2 pieces of property under 1 deed restriction, they can agree to remove them at some point in the future. So I think from a legal review of the PUD, really the only concern from a legal perspective is it's meant to be one development. You're going to split it in two. It could be sold off. So I think there's going to have to be some obligation to meet to show that it can't be sold off in some way or something like that. So I think that's something to consider for, as it moves further along the process. Okay, Ed?
And I'm totally fine with that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so Neil, you could go through those conditions that were part of the last ordinance if you can. The planning and zoning commission.
Yeah, those restrictions was the tenant age requirement, which all residents must be 55 years or older. There would be no subdividing. It could not be subdivided without written permission from the city of Warrenton. There would be no mobile homes, trailers, or other temporary movable structures. There'd be no tents, basements, or other temporary structure would not be used as a dwelling or other temporary, either temporarily or permanently. Rubbish and weeds, garbage, rubbish, bottles, any discarded material would not be allowed to accumulate nor be dumped in the subdivision. Trash receptacles, no trash, rubbish, or garbage receptacles shall be placed on premises outside the building and visible from the road. Lot use, the lot shall be used for residential purposes only. Water detention basin, all stormwater detention basins are to be maintained by the property owner. Maintenance, yard, common grounds, all grass will be mowed and trimmed approximately every 7 to 10 days, depending upon necessity. All lawn clippings and debris will be blown from sidewalks and patios and drives after each service visit. All grass areas will be fertilized a minimum of 1 time per year. All beds will be kept free of weeds, debris, and leaves. Plants and shrubs will be trimmed and pruned throughout the year. Dead wood will be removed immediately upon discovery. And then snow and ice removal. Snow removal will be done when accumulation reaches 2 inches or snow accumulation is imminent. Snow will be shoveled or plowed from all streets and front walkways. Icy conditions will be treated chemically. And then general maintenance, all vinyl siding and fencing will be pressure washed approximately every 3 to 4 years as needed. North sides of buildings and fences may need more often.
Okay, so my question would be, Ed, are those conditions that were part of your original plan unit district ordinance acceptable to the developer?
Yes.
Okay, and so I do want to take a step back, but some of you are new to planning and zoning, and so this is a little bit different than our typical request. This is a plan unit district, and essentially what that is, it allows them to create under the conditional use process a planned unified ownership development that has more amenities and has negotiable conditions with regards to the development itself. So you typically see it with apartments where they may want a little bit more density, or they want to keep it under common ownership for rental in the future. This particular PUD was previously approved. This plan unit district was previously approved by the city, and as I'm sure you guys are aware, you've seen the development be, as it's been constructed. One of the things that they're asking here tonight is to separate and make a separate planned unit district identical to the first one, so they can subdivide it. And I believe that's in your packets. We can pull that up on the screen with regards to the 2 separate PUDs that they're going to have. I believe it's Lot A and Lot B. So essentially what you all are considering here is approving the just essentially approving, allowing them to subdivide it. And like I said, from a legal concept, there is that condition that says you cannot split it. And from a legal perspective, I don't exactly know how they're going to tie the 2 properties together, but if they can do that, I do feel that it meets the spirit of the original PUD. So it's a little bit different than just a conditional use permit for apartments. This is kind of a totally different concept in and of itself. It really is a site-specific zoning ordinance. And, there are some variations from the, traditional zoning ordinance that they've put in play to utilize the plan unit district, and it's already been approved. So I'm available to answer any questions about, the project from the city perspective and the legal concepts with regards to the plan unit district that they're here to request here tonight.
So I'm trying to just understand the reason why, and if you can help me with that, Ed. So you have the big portion of it finished, so you want to be able to refinance that chunk and then move forward and finish the other one? Is that what the
Yeah.
reason is?
Correct. I mean, the first phase is going to take us about 1.5 years. And, before we always had it divided up into 2 phases. Just conceptually, it wasn't divided though, I should say. It was always going to be in 2 different phases. So now, like I said, with the rates where they're at, phase 2 is probably going to take me 1.5 years also. So I was just really wanting to lock my rates in right now for the first phase, because in 1.5 years, I'm assuming they're going to be quite a bit higher than they are right now.
So your interest only maybe, or whatever, and you want to be able to lock that part in now while it's good, and then move forward with the rest.
Correct, and we're actually already working on phase 2. So we're already back there working on phase 2. It's just phase 1 is almost finished, so that's why we're bringing that to you now. This to you now.
How much more would be left in the additional part that you're still to finish? You said 1.5 years. How many more units is that?
86.
Okay.
86 units in phase 2.
And how many have you finished so far? Just so I can kind of wrap my head around what's left.
Well, the first phase total is 84, and those will all be done within the next 30 to 45 days. Right now, we're at about 72 to 74 that are actually finished.
So Chris, can you talk a little bit about, you said it's a whole new animal of itself. It's never really been done.
Well, so yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty unusual for somebody to come and take a PUD that already exists and just completely replicate the second half of it, to split it off. I understand it's a financing, to make it more easily financeable. So the way I understand this project, Commissioner, is that they are willing to agree to every single condition that already exists in the first PUD. So I don't think there's much distinction. The only concern I have from a legal standpoint is there is this condition that says you can't subdivide it. So I think that the one concern I would have is, obviously something happens in phase 2, it doesn't get completed, and then you have it gets sold off and it's a different thing, and there's supposed to be these shared amenities. And I think, I think there's really no distinction between the first PUD as the total property and splitting it off. I think the main concern from a legal zoning standpoint is, how do you force these 2 to always remain together? I know, it always be under common ownership, but I think the reality of it is the market crashed before. There's subdivisions that have 10 different developers that occurred in there, so common ownership is only as good as the market is. So I think that Mr. Schmeltz needs to figure out, and I'm sure there's a way to do it, some mechanism to, even though it's split off so we can refinance it, you can't essentially sever one part of the project from the other. And it's really not the city's responsibility to tell him how to do it. But I think he needs to bring that to the satisfaction. And if he does that, Commissioner, I don't know that there's much difference from one PUD to 2 PUDs, because as long as they're tied together, I think it meets the intent of the original single PD.
So the big issue is there's a condition that says you can't subdivide it, and we're
correct.
Correct.
It doesn't say that you can't subdivide it without city approval.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
But the whole point of a PUD is unified ownership and shared amenities, and I think Ed would agree with that. And I think the project he has built and what he proposed has exactly what the PUD is supposed to memorialize, which is common amenities. You just want to make sure that's preserved, and consistency in the development, as it goes throughout the project. So, like I said, from a legal standpoint, as long as he can essentially show that even though it's subdivided under the subdivision ordinances, it can't be divided, by covenant and restriction beyond that, you know, I think that it basically meets all the same conditions of the single PUD before. It's just the anomaly of now being two. But I think that burden rests on the developer to, you know, bring to the city's satisfaction some mechanism to show that although it's got a legal subdivision, it can't be sold off separately, or sometime in the future somebody can't purchase it and then rescind the covenants and then have two separate pieces of property. That's ultimately the concerns, because the idea is that, you know, people in proposed lot 2A will be able to use the amenities in 2B, and 2B will be able to use the streets in 2A because they're private streets. If that is not, you know, memorialized in something to the city's satisfaction, then, you know, we would, you know, it kind of would defeat the purpose of the PUD. So, you know, I think it's fine as long as they meet that, because then it really is a academic difference between one or two PUDs.
So what would that paperwork be? It would be restrictions that we would say to be approved by Chris Gravel and make sure that we're covered.
Well,
there?
I think you know, I think I have a couple of ideas, but I think Ed's probably going to have to engage counsel to do that, or work with his engineer to do that. I mean, there are some trust provisions that can be set up. There are some covenants that, you know, can't be amended, or to change how they can be amended. And what I would recommend is approve it subject to, you know, subject to a restriction on the property that would prohibit one property from not being on lot 2A from not being under common ownership of lot 2B to the city's satisfaction. That's a little long-winded, but, you know, that's essentially what I think. They've already agreed to all those other conditions that we can write in the ordinance and same covenants. That would be, you know, the thought as far as moving it forward, and then work with the developer to come up with something to our satisfaction.
Okay. I don't even know how to make a motion.
To that effect.
Well, this is Rich. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, I have been very impressed with what's going on up there. So I'm definitely, and I've talked to many of the residents there, and they're in love with that place. So I just want to make sure that we keep this going in the right direction. So I will make approval. I will recommend approval of this PUD according to the restrictions that Chris talked about and his concerns there. Making sure that we can move forward with this to help them out, but at the same time protect ourselves.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
I'll second that.
All right.
One more thing, Ms. Blondin. You know, since this is a public hearing, I would ask, as we go through each of these approvals at this point, that you call for any public comment on it on the record, okay, so that we can make sure anybody that has any public comment, we capture it as part of this Zoom meeting. So if you could call for public comment now, and Melody, is there anybody that?
Anyone out there listening or watching that wants to comment on this item here that we just spoke about? The Orange Blossom PUD 67.
With the restrictions involved, I'm fine with that.
Is there any public that would like to make any comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
we hear
we
you.
heard your mic.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with the restrictions that he's talking about. I think that'll be a good deal, and I'd be happy with it.
So no further comment from public?
I guess not.
Okay.
So we have a motion by Mr. Barton, a second by Mrs. Blondin. Roll call vote would be Mr. Cullum.
Yes.
Mr. Cullum?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Blondin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Priest is absent. Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Deach?
Yes.
Okay. Next item.
Okay. Next item is Orange Blossom subdivision number 77.
All right, so on May 1st, we received an application for the subdivision approval to divide the plan unit development at 2007 North Highway 47 into 2 lots. So the applicant is requesting to separate the PUD in order to refinance the developed section. The proposed subdivision will be divided, we'll divide the plat into 2 lots. Lot 2A will be 11.34 acres and lot 2B will be 17.91 acres. Any other comments?
The only comment I have with regard to the subdivision is obviously this is tied to the PUD and the presentation that just occurred earlier. With regard to the subdivision, the only additional comment I would have is that the PUD requires a minimum of 3 acres. Obviously, these 2 lots meet the acreage size minimum to be able to do it, and it does not need to be a condition of this approval that they provide the documentation to show the lots cannot be subdivided or cannot fall under or must remain under common ownership, because that's part of the PUD. And obviously, if they don't get approval for the PUD by the Board of Aldermen, then the subdivision issue becomes moot. So it does need to be made part of it, and it does meet the minimum requirement for a PUD subdivision.
Anyone have any questions or comments from the public? Does anyone want to entertain a motion to approve the Orange Blossom Estates subdivision 77?
I'll make that motion to approve that Orange Blossom Estates subdivision.
Second.
Was that Mr. Taylor?
It was.
Thank you. Okay, motion by Mr. Cooper, second by Mr. Taylor. Roll call vote, Mr. Durbin,
Yes.
Mrs. Blondin,
Yes.
Mr. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Holt,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Deach,
Yes.
Mr. Cullum,
Yes.
Mr. Barton.
Yes, and that was with the restrictions that were talked about, that if the first one doesn't pass, that one would remain moot, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, then next item is Creekside Apartments subdivision 78.
Okay, so on May 1st, we received an application for subdivision approval that was submitted to divide the plat at North Service Road and Highway AA into 3 smaller lots, subdivision SUBD-78. The application for the subdivision approval was submitted. The proposed subdivision will divide the plat into 3 lots, which will later go through the rezoning process. Lot 1 is 1.03 acres. Lot 2 is 18.16 acres. And Lot 3 will be 2.50 acres. Any other comments?
So I just have one comment. I feel like this is a huge development to not have proper public comment on.
So, Commissioner, I think that's a great comment. I will point out the fact that, you know, unlike most cities, we do have 2 public hearings. There will be an opportunity for a second public comment, and we will take written comments from the public with regards to this development. You know, when we move forward to our Board of Aldermen public hearing, I understand there's a concern because this is not in person, but we did follow all the procedures for notification of the public with regards to publication and posting of the site. I would ask that we see if there's any public comment on this project at this point before we get into discussion. But I would also point out Commissioner, that the subdivision itself is not approving the development, it's the planned unit district. So, you know, I think generally the whole project can be discussed, but, you know, the public comments will be really pertinent to the second planned unit, or the
Okay.
next approval, which is the planned unit district.
Okay. So does anyone have any comments regarding the subdivision 77 for?
I can't hear them. I mean, I can hear this, but I just can't hear it.
Hello, my name is Marilyn. And I have property 302.
Okay, hold on a second, Natalie. I think we got a couple of people. Maybe what we can do for simplicity, can everybody mute their mics right now while Natalie speaks, and then that way she can be heard clear, and then we can kind of go from there, obviously, except for you, Commissioner Blondin, so you can.
We're too close.
So if you touch your screen, you should see a little microphone icon, and everyone can push that so that we'll mute you, and we can only hear one person speaking at a time without feedback. Okay, Marilyn, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Can see, but there's some really bad feedback coming through here.
Is this better?
That's better. Are you standing near a phone or anything else?
Well, I got two phones here. We're at the city hall for the meeting.
Okay.
I own property. It's Lake Har, used to be Lake Har on Spady and the service road, which
32 acres there.
There's 34. Well, once it's 34, once it's 32 acres. And I believe that things along the service road there are for commercial use and not residential. I think residential would bring our property values down, and I would like to vote no on apartments. I've been in two areas that apartments came in, ruined them. And one was Jennings. I was raised there, and the apartments came in and just ruined our city. And also in Spanish Lake, we had a wonderful area. Apartments came in. You get all kinds of, I know people have to have a place to live, but you get them in there, you cannot get them out. I have renters of my own, and I know how difficult it is to deal with renters and the law. And I would vote no against that. I think that would devalue the property along that service road. It's a great access. It's halfway between Columbia, and I think it can be used for commercial. And that's all I would like to say.
Thank you. We appreciate your comment. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to say?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Well, hold on a sec, Commissioner. Marilyn, can you state your full name and address for the record so Melody can get it down for for purposes of public hearing?
It's Marilyn, Marilyn, Sides, Sides, and the other name is Hoenig, Hoenig. The properties are under Sides Limited Partnership, I think. And my address is 2648 Samuel, Samuel Drive. And I live in Darden Prairie, Missouri, Dardenne, Prairie, Missouri. And the zip is 63368.
Okay, thank you. I apologize, Commissioner. I just want to make sure Melody was able to get that down. So,
do you want my phone number? Do you need phone number?
No, that's fine. We have your name and address.
Okay.
Thank you, Marilyn. Okay, sir, if you could state your name and your address and your concerns.
My name. Should I hit the call button?
We can hear you.
You got me?
We got you. We can hear you.
Okay. My name is Steve Scott, and my wife is here, Barbara Scott, and we own, this land is kind of L-shaped. We have the land just north of the lower part of L, and we also have land up on top. We have lived there for 42 years now, and we observed if you have apartments in this area, you have no sidewalks, you have people walking down the service road, no lights or anything. It's a very dangerous area at night. You have commercial property on both sides of this property already. And I don't think it should go for residential or apartments. And I would vote no for it. And also my wife is right here, which she can say she would vote for it. We'll say it.
No, I would vote no. My name is Barbara Scott.
Okay, do you want any information on my address, phone numbers, or anything like that?
Is your address 68 Highway AA,
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Warrenton, Missouri,
Yes, ma'am.
63383? Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you for listening.
Is there anyone else that would like to comment or have anything to say regarding this subdivision?
Yes, I do. Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you state your name and address?
Sure. Sure. This is George Heath. Oh, sorry. I'll let him go.
Oh, okay. My name's John Hanick, and I am the son of Marilyn Sides Hanick. You just heard two before, and I am in the same agreement with No Apartments, and I'm on Lake Harhart is where we're at. So basically everything she had said about No Apartments there, I believe it's commercial, both sides. I have agreed with all the people that are walking down the roads. I've encountered that myself coming through the service road, and it's dark, there's no lights, and you can't see people through there, and they're walking, and it's just, I think it degrades the area. You tend to get lower income people, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm in the trades myself. It's not anything with the quality of people, but you tend to, with apartments, I've seen you don't get the utmost standards on taking care of your property sometimes. And I think it's a nice area there, and I'd hate to see it go down for the worse. And so I vote no on it.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Mr. George Heath, do you want to say something?
Yes, I'm the owner of where Unlimited Truck and Repair. It's 5 acres that adjoins 66 acres to the north of it. I agree with you, Stacy. I would just, I'm kind of neutral. I would like to just see everything in person more than, me personally, I can't stand Zoom meetings, but this is what we live in. But I just like to see, see all the prints, see everything in front of me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, George. Any other public comments or questions? Mr. Schmelz, do you or your engineer want to speak on behalf, or do you want to wait for the PUD to come up, or?
Oh. We can wait for the PUD discussion.
Okay. So any other questions from the commissioners on this?
This is Rich Taylor. Not so much a comment on any product or anything, but I noticed that when we got our little paperwork on the fact that this was going to be a meeting outside of the chambers and electronically, perhaps if there is some discussion about needing more input, or perhaps there has to be more time or make it more available, that the same sort of information that due to the COVID virus and everything, that's why this is being set up the way it has been.
Sure, I think that's a great point, Rich. I mean, obviously, we're all trying to figure out how to move city business forward and meet the statutory requirements. This is not ideal. We've had, a couple of meetings this way, and it's extremely difficult when you have such a large development, as Commissioner Blondin stated earlier, to, feel like, does the public know about this project? I would ask Neil if we could possibly put on the website the plans and drawings and reports from this particular meeting for the application before it gets set before the Board of Aldermen public hearing. We will also advertise for that public hearing in front of the Board of Aldermen, and I also want to just state that, you guys do have the authority. I know it's probably not ideal for Ed, but I'm sure he's sympathetic to some of the concerns of the Planning and Zoning Commissioner of such a large project going in the city. You guys do have the ability to, hold the public hearings today and, postpone consideration of some or all of these items to a meeting in the future, like the next meeting, for example. We do meet the statutory requirements for a public hearing. So I wouldn't imagine, unless the Board of Aldermen directed us to have another public hearing at Planning and Zoning, that we would necessarily do that, because unlike pretty much any other city, we do 2 public hearings for all projects. So there will be a second opportunity for the public to consider this. But I think, Neil, we can probably put this on the website with a link so that people, can go and review it online, the packets. Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I'll get with Melody, find out exactly, what the stuff is. But I had multiple people call me.
I understand. I'm just saying, I think,
also actually sent over copies. I had them put in a sunshine request, email it to me, and right away I sent copies of the plan, so they knew exactly what was going on.
Right. Well, I think, Neil, for purposes of, transparency and the limitations of doing this in a Zoom meeting because of our capacity limitations and safety concerns, that, we consider taking the extraordinary step, if it's possible, to put it on the website so that people can look at it. If it's possible, it's possible. If it's not, it's not. But, as I stated before, there will be a second public hearing in front of the Board of Aldermen. So a second publication, a second notice, a second posting of the property for all parts of this that require a public hearing.
So right now in front of us is just the subdivision.
Just the subdivision, that's correct. And I believe they meet the minimum requirements for the subdivision. Because really, you're considering, what is the current zoning of all 3 tracks, Neil?
So right now it's all M1, but it's going to be both the small lots are going to be C3 and the larger lot is going to be R3.
Okay, but the only thing you're considering in this action item, Planning and Zoning Commission, is the subdivision, and you're taking one lot that is all M1 and you're considering, and it meets the lot requirements, correct, Neil? For
Correct.
M1. So you're subdividing an M1 lot into 3 M1 lots. That's really what is your consideration right now, is the subdivision of 1 to 3 M1 lots.
Correct.
But they're all M1, and you want
Correct.
the 1.02 to go C3, the 18 acres to go R3, and the 2.5
Well,
to go C3.
that would be the next step. This is the drawing I had just to show you those lots.
Right.
The next step will be the zoning, but right now it's just to divide
Just the
those 3 lots.
subdivision. Okay.
Right. And there's no reason not to approve the division. They meet the lot minimum requirements. It's ministerial to a certain extent. Was
Okay.
there any recommendations, Neil, with regards to sidewalks on the subdivision?
Yes, there is, and that's
Okay,
under,
let's go
and
through
I
that.
think I have that under the PUD instead of the subdivision. Let me check here. Yeah, so I do have it under the subdivision. So, and that is either sidewalks or to go into the sidewalk fund, and that would be a total of $17,814 that would go into the sidewalk fund, and that is just for the frontage on the North Service Road.
So the condition of the subdivision is from 1 M1 lot to 3 M1 lots is subdivisions along the North Highway 70 outer road, correct? The frontage?
Correct.
Okay. And there's no reason not to approve the division. They meet the lot minimum requirements. It's ministerial to a certain extent. Was there any recommendation, Neil, with regards to sidewalks on the subdivision?
Yes, That was for lot 2, correct?
Okay, and no additional recommendations for sidewalks, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Schmeltz, have you considered with regard to the subdivision, whether you want are you requesting to pay into the sidewalk fund in lieu of installation of the sidewalks?
I guess at this point, I hadn't really given that any thought yet. I guess I didn't know if I could put sidewalks in a MoDOT right of way like that.
Well, I think that the Planning and Zoning Commission, since it is a ministerial, you could approve it with sidewalks. Obviously, consider that at a later point in time.
Talking about putting sidewalks on the outer road.
I would like to know if these apartments are subsidized.
Okay, who is talking right now? Could you guys put it on mute, please? Okay. Sorry, Commissioner, go ahead.
Did somebody have a comment from the commissioners?
Yes, I have a comment. What are we trying to approve here? Are we now? The apartments that they're planning on. Are we working on the apartment part?
No,
making it
a.
Just the subdivision.
Just right now, we're just working on dividing the 3 pieces of property.
Correct.
Yeah. One in.
Are we going to move on to what's going to go on?
You guys can consider some action item after everybody's had a chance to consider it and make any comments that they have.
I guess from my perspective, I'm a little troubled by the fact that this is a significant development, and I'm not sure how much input we've had from residents in the area. And it seems to me that maybe if we go ahead and approve the subdivision, then are we not automatically moving to approve what's going to go in there, the apartments? And
that's a great question, Commissioner.
I have some reservations about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. You are not automatically approving the planned unit district or even the rezoning. The rezoning is a legislative consideration that you make recommendations on. It could easily be re-subdivided and the rezoning and the PUD not be approved. That's completely legal. Nothing is precedential. The only thing that is, they may build in their plan one action on the next one, but they are all independent determinations. You could approve the subdivision, approve the rezone, and deny the planned unit district. Your considerations are 3 separate considerations. One more comment I would make is, we can also let the public know or post on our website, Neil, that we can take written comments as well with regards to the development itself.
Okay.
So if we take this, if we take this off and change the zoning, are we taking this apartment area, are we taking it out of the commercial?
Well, yeah, obviously the R3 is going to be to a residential zoning, for the apartments, I think is what their proposed plan is.
Okay, and also we just got finished telling Truesdale that we didn't want any kind of we couldn't handle the sewer part of it. So are we sitting here, are we using up what available sewer, the available sewer place?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we did what the city of Warrenton did is we hired an engineer to do essentially a capacity study for purposes of where we are in our planning for the next stage of sewer growth. So this was included as part of our capacity study and was included as part of the city's capacity for planned future use, including various other parcels of ground that people have approached the city for development for single-family residential and multifamily development. So those are not commitments for sewer, but we have planned for adequate sewer to service this without issues.
So are we adding sewer, availability? Are we getting ready to do something about that?
Sewer availability that's a great question, because going through it the first time, it is not something you wake up in the morning and say, today I'm adding sewer availability. You have to essentially go through these preliminary capacity studies. You have to study and continue to update what your usage and proposed usage is. So, I think the city has done a pretty darn good job for the last 2 major sewer upgrades to be ahead of the curve. So yes, we are in the process of, as crazy as it may sound, planning based on the contacts with the city for, developers wanting to come to the city. We are in the process of planning the beginning stages of planning our next sewer improvement. I mean, that's the reason why we had to, we're in the process when Truesdale approached for all those apartments, and we got that information back, those calculations back, and we have requested from Truesdale their study of what they propose the capacity, so we know what to start scoping for our project for the next big addition to the sewer plant. I think those are good discussions to have and good planning exercises.
The thing about so what we're basically wanting to vote on is changing that to residential property on the
You're not
on
voting
the
on,
highway.
this vote is not changing residential, Commissioner Durbin. This is merely to take one M3 lot and split it to 3 M3 lots. That's all this consideration is, with the condition that sidewalks be added on the Highway 70 frontage.
And they meet all of those requirements.
Correct.
And they have to put this, we subdivide, they have to put into the sidewalk fund. Or
one or the
sidewalk.
other, one or the other.
One or the other.
That'll be up to the board to work out with the developer. I would imagine based on the public comments, there's going to be a desire to develop, like along Highway 47, develop or begin the process of developing a public access way if the project is ultimately approved. So I don't want to speak for the board, but I'm sure they're going to be very concerned with public access along the sidewalks, pedestrian access, I mean.
Yeah, because there's no sidewalks out there now, and it would be hard to make them put something in and try to match up something later on, because there's a elevation issue over by where lot 1 is going to be at that we would have to match up, but that would be in the future. So like we did on CEF, I calculated for lot 2 because further on we're going to work on that lot, and that's going to be developed, but lot 1 and 3 are not going to be developed. So I put it in the notes that no improvements are proposed at this time, and lots 1 and 3, the future developer will be responsible for stormwater management plan and associated development fees as well as sidewalks.
Okay, well, I think we need to move on from the subdivision part of it, correct?
Correct.
And get into the next part. So does anyone want to make a motion on subdivision 77?
78.
This is 78.
Oh, I'm on, oh,
And since they have met all the requirements they meet all the requirements of the city ordinances, and we're going to add the sidewalk provision in there, I would go ahead and make a motion to approve subdivision -78 for Creekside Apartments.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Barton, second by Mr. Cooper. Roll call vote. Mr. Holt? I think you might be on mute still, Mr. Holt.
Yes, vote is yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Deach?
Yes.
Mr. Cullum?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Blondin?
yeah, yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-0.
And then the next item is Creekside Apartments zoning change 61.
Okay, so on May 1st, a request was filed for zone change approval to allow C3 commercial and R3 high density residential to be located on the North Service Road and Highway AA, where it is now zoned, well, it was zoned M1 light industrial. The request is for a total of 3 lots to change the zoning. Lot 1 is 1.03 acres. It will change from M1 to C3. Lot 2 is 18.16 acres. It will change from M1 to R3. And lot 3 is 2.50 acres and will change from M1 to C3. The zoning changes will allow both C3 and R3 development, which meets the guidelines of the city comprehensive plan. Any comments?
Any comments from the public or commissioners? We've heard from the public before. I think that probably stays the same because this is where it's going to matter, right, Chris?
Yeah, I think that absolutely. I mean, if anybody has any additional comments, we have the names and the comments with regards to subdivision that will be applied for consideration for the commission and also reported to the Board of Aldermen regarding, you know, the subdivision, the rezoning, and the PUD. But if there are additional comments, this would be the opportunity to take those at this time.
Okay, now this is the part where we're talking about wanting to put the apartments on the outer road, basically.
No, this is the consideration of the rezoning.
This is just the rezoning. The next one would be the apartment buildings itself.
Okay, this
And
is
the
just,
unit.
okay,
So the zoning change is basically M1, which is light. What is exactly light?
Light
M1.
industrial.
Can you explain M1?
It's light industrial.
Light industrial. So then what makes it high density residential? Multifamily apartment complex?
Multifamily, yes. And you can't do multifamily in M1. M1 was restrictive as far as residential development, so you can't put those in an M1.
So taking it from light industrial to C3 and resident, and then the big portion of residential.
Correct.
R3 high density. Okay. And
Yeah,
then the next item would be the PUD. So any comments on the rezoning?
So the rezoning then would make it possible to construct the apartments. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
That's correct.
Can
I thought this area was supposed to be used for commercial or light industrial. This whole.
That's what it's zoned now, and they're proposing to change it.
Yeah.
I don't agree with changing it because I don't want to see the apartments on the.
Well, it was on.
Okay,
It's
guys,
commercial.
can people listening please mute your mic? So Commissioner Durbin can be heard. Commissioner, if you can proceed.
Okay, I just don't agree with, I mean, that front part I think should be commercial, but I'm not, you know, apartments to me, there's plenty of places around here we can put apartments, and right up front there to me does not seem to be a good idea, so.
Neil, one of the comments you made was regarding the comprehensive plan. You said it was consistent with the comprehensive plan. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit for the planning and zoning commissioners regarding that?
Looking at that change, that M1, but R3 further down, just across that, everything to the northwest, that is R3 over there. So this area, I mean, if we want to keep this as a development, that is great, but we still have R3 in that area. So it still goes along. I mean, I know we want development there, but at the same time, we're also trying to bring people into the city and at a.
Well, so Neil, hold on real quick. Melody, can you bring up the zoning map? Is that possible on here that we can look at? And Neil, if you can show
Yeah.
us the R3, or Melody, if you can show us the R3 where it's around, I think that's probably going to be the best way to.
I'm not guaranteeing anything, okay? This is the area right here.
Yeah. So everything to the west is still R3, to the north is R2, and then over to the west, we still have our C3 where they divided their small areas, so that still sticks with the C3.
I think what they're saying is residential right there along the highway
Okay.
in a highly visible spot is probably not a great outcome for people, for some people. Is that what you were saying, Mike?
I think it was Dan,
Yeah,
Mr. Durbin.
believe so.
Yes, I just don't, I don't agree with taking it, a highly, visible commercial spot and put apartments in there. We got plenty of places we can put apartments.
Can I speak at this time?
Yes.
This is Rich Martin. I think we got, first of all, Jason's iPad and Neil's iPad are still on, so that might be causing some of the problems too if they're not muting in between. But I'd like to talk about the issue of apartments per se in our neighborhood, in our community. I respect everybody's opinion when they call in, but we're having people call in from other towns that own property here and throwing their concern in there, and I respect that. But one thing that our community, we have really fought the last few years to try to find more residential places for people to live. We've done a great job for the 55 years and older. We've got 2 new places with Orange Blossom and the one by the fairgrounds. We've got the $150,000 to $200,000 houses we said a few years ago that was a goal of ours. We have done a really good job in that area. We've got several houses. The apartment process in our community is absolutely atrocious for people to come in here and try to find an apartment to live in. I think it's time that we take a step up. I don't know if this is the right place. That's something that we have to agree upon. But I think apartments are an important part of a community. And I look at other communities along I-70 there, or Highway 40 or I-64 down there before at the Lake St. Louis past the Wing Haven exit. Those apartments, I've got a buddy that lives in there. Those are beautiful. No one wants them built in their backyard. I respect that. I understand that. We have apartments over by us, and we don't have too many problems. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do think that we do need apartment complexes in our neighborhood under the right. So I'm not against apartments, and I think a lot of people have a bad connotation of what apartment life is about. So I'm going to mute now and let someone else respond.
This is Rich Taylor. I'd like to build on what the other Rich just said as well. The comprehensive plan, we heard from a lot of people in Warrenton, and one of the major things that they talked about was inability to get inexpensive housing, which almost always means apartments as opposed to housing units. So I think we have to, if we're going to make a decision, it should lean a little bit toward getting more inexpensive housing.
Well, we could put some on Scudder Ranch. No.
Okay, any other comments?
Again, somebody's making comments that they don't want heard, so please mute if you're not talking. Thank you.
I think he can hear stuff.
I think that's a TV or something in the background.
Melody, do you have the TV on?
I wish, no.
No, somebody just made a comment that they could build them somewhere else, and I don't know if they thought that was being heard, but it was. So just be careful what we're saying, that this is a live feed. So
I don't know where it's coming from. I really don't.
I was wondering, I'm Marilyn. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Marilyn.
Oh, I feel that that should remain commercial, being right on the road like that. I think the apartments, that's fine. Some villas, I live in a villa myself. Some nice villas or apartments, that type of lesser expensive, but I do feel it could be built somewhere else off the road. And I think they would be like nice to be off the road rather than to be right on the highway like that. I think that should be for the commercial. So that's my vote.
And you know Tad Bierman died.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Can I
wanna
make a
point out-
comment?
I do want to point out real quick to everybody listening and the Planning and Zoning Commission, as it's shown on the map on the shared screen, it is not a commercial zoning. It's not C3, C4, C2. It is M1, which is light industrial. I just want to make sure that that clarification is made, that is not currently commercial.
Any further comments or questions? Mr. Smells, do you want to speak on behalf of the development? Or does your engineer have anything to say or add?
We have another person that would like to speak. He's working with his phone.
Okay, are you guys waiting in the lobby all together?
We're down here for the meeting at the city hall
I know, but where are you guys?
in the parking lot.
Oh, okay. Are you guys close together?
There's nowhere to go.
Oh, I understand.
No.
Okay, all
We're-
right, because the feedback is just what we're trying to deal with, but go ahead, whoever else wants to make a comment.
If you can hear me 1 second, we're hard of hearing and I'm trying to yell and stay apart from him so our phones don't go crazy.
Okay.
1 second, I'm sorry. I'm trying to make this coordinated.
Can you use his phone?
There, try it now.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm
Can you
a
state
little
your name,
confused.
please,
I've got
sir?
hearing problems and I'm trying to stick with y'all, but if you'll back up and look at the service road and where AA is, and you've got an M1 there, that's the area that you're planning on doing the building in. We also have sidewalk problems up to there. Just above that M1 is some land that's R2 that shows a subdivision. That is no longer there. That property also belongs to me, which is on the top part of the M1. We have other problems in the area from Coca-Cola over there. They've got 2 lagoons over there. Another building to the west of them has a big lagoon. In the summertime, we got to get a lot of stench and stink from that company over there, which I'm sure anybody who tried living down by that highway would not like. Plus the highway, being I've been there 42 years, it's extremely noisy. It's getting worse. We also are having a problem with that creek doing a lot of flooding now since they built more in Truesdale and to the south side of 70. We get a lot more watershed coming down through there and our fields are flooding from it. And I think I agree with the other people who've spoken that it would depreciate the value of our properties if we do that. I do have 30 acres right there, which adjacent to the M1 property you're talking about. And I think that's about, I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk. And I think that'll do.
Could you state your name, sir?
My name is Steve Scott. I live at 68 Highway AA, and I've been a resident there for 42 years.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Do we
None
want
from the parking lot.
do we want to entertain a motion, commissioners?
You know, one more thing I just thought about, the apartments over there in Virginia Village. They have a company in there that is totally gutting and redoing those apartments. So in the very near future, we're going to have a lot of extra apartments available there. I don't know what size as far as 1 or 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms or whatever they're going to be, but they are totally rejuvenating that whole area over there. So, you know, when it comes to apartments, there's going to be some available in that particular area, which is right around the street from that.
And I would like to say, in being in my line of work, we have a huge need in Warrenton for apartments, for any kind of rental, any kind of rental. We get day calls all day long for rentals. They're hard to come by. They're more expensive day by day. Ed, can you say what kind of rent you're going to ask for there?
Okay, yes, so we'll have everything from a 1-bedroom to a 3-bedroom. The 1-bedrooms will be $690. The 2 bedrooms will range from $790 to $850, and the 3 bedrooms will probably be around $950 to $1,000. And you know, just to say a couple of other things, you know, I did research on several other parcels in the area. I mean, I didn't just go into this lightly. You know, I did research on several other pieces. I just kept coming back to this one. This one just kept jumping out at me as a great location. You know, we've gotten approval from, maybe I'm getting into the PUD too much here, sorry, but you know, we've gotten approvals from MoDOT for 2 entrances, which I think is huge. I think it's going to be great for the tenants to have easy access to Highway 70. You know, to go back to Rich's point earlier, you know, you get down into some of those cities, you get down into, you know, Eureka, Wildwood, Chesterfield. There's complexes that are nice all over the main roads. So I just feel like this is a great location for R3, and yeah, that's about it.
Now, Ed, can I ask you a quick question? When you talked to MoDOT, you didn't talk to them about sidewalks. Is that something you can have a conversation about with them?
Yeah, we can talk to them about that for sure.
I'd like to speak in and get on that regard. I know the city is working very hard towards building sidewalks over the place. We've discussed it. We've had meetings on it, continuous meetings about sidewalks. If an event like this came about or a project like this came about, you know that sidewalks are going to be a vital issue of that. Mr. Deach and so forth, we're not going to let a thing like this come in without that being addressed. We have good communication on sidewalks. We want our citizens to be safe, and if sidewalks makes it safer, that's what it is. We talk about bringing business into our community. I guarantee you that businesses one of the first things they talked about to the Economic Development Committee, you can ask Steve Etcher, Joanne Turper, and all those folks that deal with that on a daily basis. One of the things that drags us down is we don't have places for people to live. The price range that he just talked about is very in line with those that live down there in the valley where I was talking about. A lot of those people work at MasterCard. They come in here, they come in from other places. They get a job at MasterCard, they rent those apartments. Stacy, thank you for stating what you said about, from your real estate perspective, that there's a definite need for this. And I've lived here since 1989. And when I came into this town, I could not find a place to live. And it was tough in 1989, and it remains so in 2020.
And Chris, you said that there would be, how do we make sure that there's going to be adequate knowledge for people to be able to have some public comment before the Alderman meeting?
So I've been texting with the city administrator with regards to your all's concern about public comment, and it is her belief, short of some setback or second wave, that the next public hearing will be in person. And I'm sure we will continue to take written comments before that public hearing, which we typically don't do, but it's my understanding we're looking at an in-person hearing. I will say that if because of this concern by planning and zoning of not having in person, I will asked Neil to make it part of his report, that is a concern of the Planning and Zoning Commission on a project of this size. Therefore, we will ask them to consider, if they are not in person next meeting, to postponing it to a meeting where we can have an in-person hearing and have everybody's whose comments and anybody additionally to come and comment again in front of the Board of Aldermen.
Yeah, let me remind everybody on the commission that when we make a motion for this, we have to make a motion in the affirmative. All that means is that when it comes for a vote, you can vote any way you choose, but we have to make it in the means of an affirmative. And we're making recommendations to the Board of Aldermen. That is our duty, is to make recommendations, take the input from the community, and make a good recommendation for the Board of Aldermen to have a head start on this.
Okay, so do we want to make a motion, entertain a motion to approve Creekside Apartments zoning change 61?
If there's no other comments at this time, I will do that, and then you can leave it up to open for communication if you want to after I make my proposal. But I do make a motion to approve the zone change 61 for the Creekside Apartments.
Second.
Was that Mr. Taylor?
It was.
Thank you. All right, motion by Mr. Barton, second by Mr. Taylor to approve Creekside Apartment Zone Change 61. Roll call vote, Mr. Cooper? Mr. Cooper? You might be on mute.
I got you. Yes.
Okay. Yes?
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Deach?
No.
Mr. Cullum?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
No.
Mrs. Blondin?
No.
5. Motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 3.
Okay. Next item, last item, is the Creekside Apartments PUD 68.
All right, so on May 1st, a request was filed for approval for a planned unit development located at the North Service Road and Highway AA. The conditional use permit procedures intended to provide the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Aldermen a discretionary review of requests to establish or construct uses or structures that would be necessary or desirable in a zoning district, but which may have the potential for negative or a negative impact on the health, safety, and welfare of the public. The purpose of the review is to determine whether the proposed location of the use of the structure is appropriate and whether it will be designed, located, and operated so to avoid, minimize, or mitigate adverse impacts on the community and other properties in the vicinity. The planned unit development is intended to provide for developments incorporating a single type or a variety of related uses that are planned and developed as a unit. Such development may consist of conventionally subdivided lots or provide for development by planned unit development plan in keeping with the purpose of the plan. The applicant proposes to build a 125 unit apartment complex. The complex will consist of 1 office building, 2 6-unit buildings, 4 8-unit buildings, and 5 16-unit buildings. Any comments?
I'm Marilyn. I have a comment.
Okay, Marilyn, real quick, can you step away from?
Yeah, they are. They are.
Okay, all right, perfect. Thank you, guys. Sorry about the, we're going to get
Yeah,
through
we
this,
forgot.
I promise.
Okay. I was wondering how the grading and the water drainage is going to affect everybody. I have the lake down there, and I've already had a problem with somebody doing work and polluting my lake. I was just wondering about this area, how they're gonna handle the water situation.
Here, let Mr. Wolf address that.
Yes, as far as the stormwater goes, this property on the east side is at a higher elevation, and as it goes to the west side, it's at a lower elevation, and as we go to the north, it's at a lower elevation. So basically, we have not done the final calculations for this development, but in our preliminary numbers, the storm sewer will be caught and run through detention basins, and it will be piped to the existing creek that's there now after it's been captured through a basin and metered out at the pre-existing condition rates.
And at the northern part, there is you can see it doesn't show this. Can we scroll down to the top of the drawing?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, so it showed the additional detention basin at the top and the additional sewer inlets up there as well.
I know there was a comment about the creek increased in flooding before. How will this affect, Mr. Wolf, how will this affect that concern, or is that something that will come out of the final stormwater calculations? And if there is, what's the creek capacity, and, will it be reinforced with riprap or whatnot to, absorb this additional, it looks like you have some type of design there. Can you explain that maybe a little bit better for some of the listeners?
Yeah, with the development that we have right now, because of the location of the channel, how it sits through this piece of property, what we tried to do is, you can see that if you look at an aerial photo, you can see that the underlying ground is mostly farm ground out there with the wooded areas along the creek itself. We are trying to avoid that area along the creek. We're not planning on getting into the creek whatsoever, except for our discharge of our storm sewer pipes. We will not increase, there is a mapped floodplain through this development, and you can kind of see that as some of those, the gray hatch lines. So FEMA provides that information to the city and to everyone as far as the development goes. And we will have to maintain base flood elevations per the city's code to make sure all our buildings are elevated above any of the floodplain. We are staying quite a ways away from those limits, which allows us to raise the buildings more than just to the minimum. We're going to be well above with our building elevations. As far as the development goes, we're catching our stormwater and metering it back into the existing channel at a pre-existing rate. So as far as the stormwater goes, like Chris mentioned, we haven't completed our final design on this, but in working with projects just similar to this in the past, there should not be any adverse effects to the existing channel whatsoever based on this development.
And as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an engineer, but you are not proposing to FEMA for a floodplain permit to alter the floodplain at all. Is that correct for this development?
That is correct.
Can you maybe explain that a little bit and what that means for, I mean, obviously one of the planning and development criteria is the conservation of current stormwater routes and, trees and vegetation. Can you explain that a little bit? And that may be a little bit helpful.
Yeah, basically, I mean, you're right, Chris. We are not requesting any kind of development permit through FEMA or the Corps at this time, because we're not getting into anything in the area of the channel except for the existing sanitary sewer that's already there. This piece has 2 sanitary sewer lines that run in through it, and they run along the creek channel. on the banks of the creek channel. We will have to tie into the existing sewer, but as far as our grading and as far as the buildings themselves, they will be outside of the mapped floodplain, which we will not be required to get a floodplain development permit because we will not be going into the floodplain.
The final thing I wanted to point out, we did a calculation, and Ed, you may be able to affirm or, not affirm my math, because anybody on here knows, don't trust me with math. When I did the calculations, if you would have applied for a conditional use permit, you would have had a higher capacity of apartments than what you're applying for with the PUD. Is that correct, Neil? I think we looked at it. It was.
Yeah, that was correct.
So the density for the PUD will actually be lower and will be restricted to the 250 units that they are requesting at this time from the R3 zoning district. Mr. Wolf, you don't look like you agree with that.
Oh, I think it was Chris. I think Chris might have misspoke there when he said, I thought he just said 250 units, and we're at the 124 residential units plus the office building, so 125 total units if you count the office building. I just
oh no, that's great. That's even lower density than that's less than half the density with a conditional use permit for R3 in the zoning district. Is that correct, Neil?
Well, yeah, because then it would have been that I was incorrect then with the total amount that I put on there.
125 units, is that correct?
Yes.
So for the Planning and Zoning Commission, I had a teleconference with Neil this afternoon, and we talked about density. And in an R3, if they went to the maximum density, it would be 290 units we calculated. So their PUD will be restricted to 125 units. Is that correct, guys?
That's what.
Yeah, I have 125 based upon the numbers we have.
Okay, so this density and will be restricted without coming back and amending their PUD to the 125 units. And I think a big part of that is probably the fact that they're leaving the floodplain undisturbed and not getting a Corps engineer permit to build within that floodplain, which probably keeps them out of a lot of stormwater redesign and preserves, like the PUD requires, the natural water courseways. So this is far less than if they applied for a conditional use permit for apartments, far less density.
Approximately how many people do they figure is going to be living at this development?
24.
Yeah,
Well, that's units. How many people do those units house if there's
Oh, you're right.
2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 1 bedroom?
So 36. To give an exact number, we can do a calculation on that, but at the top of the plan, the A units, which is the bigger building, basically what we have there is we have 8 2-bedroom units there. The B units, the yellow units, we have 3-bedroom units. We got 12 of those. And then the C is back to 2-bedroom units. Individual townhome units, 32 of those units. We're providing for the 125 units, the required spaces, we're providing 251 parking spaces. As far as the how many people are going to be living in there, full occupancy, based on the number of bedrooms, that would be a calculation that we could do. But in your experience, Ed, as far as the 3-bedroom versus 2 bedrooms?
That's tough to say. We have a lot of places like this where one person lives in a 2-bedroom unit or 2 people live in a 1-bedroom unit. But if on average, if we say 1 per bedroom, if you give me one quick second.
Commissioners, I think they failed the math test.
I failed it too. I came up with 116. That's not right.
Yeah, let's see, that's 20 of those are one bedrooms.
Out of the 80.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I didn't hear the 1 bedroom count, I think, maybe.
yeah, there's actually in those A buildings, we put 2 bedroom units. Actually, there is 20 of the 80 units, 20 are 1 bedrooms, 60 are 2 bedrooms. I misspoke on that, but this plan, it should say 20 1-bedroom units and 60 2-bedroom units out of the total 80 units.
I got 240. Okay. 240 bedrooms.
I think it's got to be more than that, because that would just mean, average of, I guess maybe it could be an average of 1 person, 2 people per unit. I just know there's a lot of families out there, with housing where there's multiple kids and 3 bedrooms. You're gonna need more 3 bedrooms, is what I'm saying.
We just figured 1 per bedroom. That was how we figured it real quick. So.
No, I'm just, there's a lot of people in need of housing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I want to point out, this is a plan unit district, so this is the Planning and Zoning Commission in their review has the ability, part of the plan unit district is the amenities. When you consider this flexible zoning district, is what amenities will be in place for kind of the higher density residential in this area, and I think it's important that they go over that. The other thing I wanted to hopefully have Mr. Smeltz address was, the fire department review of turn radius and whatnot for fire access. I think that's important also to consider for the plan unit district.
I spoke with the fire chief, and they have already approved this, the turnarounds, locations of hydrants, so they were okay with this plan.
And Ed, do you want to talk a little bit about the amenities of this development, and maybe have you done this in other places? I know one of the things people like to do, they very much appreciated with Orange Blossom was you said, I built this here. Do you have an example of architecture? I know you provided some pictures, so I would assume you did. So I know some people traveled and went and looked at those, so they kind of got that touch and feel for it. You can maybe address those 2 things.
Correct. So I am doing one of these right now currently in Washington. And I sent to Neil last week several actual pictures of buildings and several renderings of ones I did not have pictures of. I sent in several floor plans of layouts. A lot of these units are very large units. As far as just to give me a second to talk about amenities, the 3-bedroom units are over 1,640 square feet. So they are very, very large units. They're 3-bed, 2.5 bath. Every unit in the whole development will have washer dryer hookups. In the A units, the 2-bedroom units are 1,140 square feet, 2 beds, 2 baths. And then the 1-bedrooms are 840 square feet. The picture you're looking at right now is the A unit. So like I said, everything has a washer dryer hookup. The office does have a laundry room with it with operated washers and dryers, just for the people who don't have their own washers and dryers. We do have a playground over by the office with some extra parking over there. And we will also have a dog park over on the other side of the office. And we didn't show it on here, but sporadically we usually place some picnic tables on a concrete pad just for people to have somewhere to sit.
Will there be designated sidewalks continuously throughout the project from point A to point Z? I know that was one of the things that was brought up at Orange Blossom, and also, the lighting within the, parking lot and pedestrian ways. Can you address that?
Right. There, if you look at the plan, there is sidewalks throughout the whole project. I think we showed lighting. We did not show lighting on this plan. We did not show street lighting, but obviously we would work with Ameren on putting those where necessary.
The 3 bedrooms units, which mainly be for children and stuff.
Oh, Mr.
And
Dirk,
You muted yourself.
you're muted.
The 3 bedroom units, where are they located at? And if we're gonna have children, which means we're putting these right next to the highway, is the units with children and stuff gonna be towards the back or about approximately how they gonna be set up?
Right. The yellow units are the 3 bedroom units. So yes, they are a little bit towards the back off the highway.
And
That's
then
all I
do you propose that you're going to have some brick elevations like you show in the pictures?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
will all the units have some brick on them?
Everyone, yes.
One of the other discussions in Orange Blossom, since this is our second PUD with Mr. Smeltz, was regarding greenscape, landscape. Are there any proposed landscape islands or the landscaping? What is your concept for the PUD for landscaping or greenscape throughout the project beyond the preserved wooded area? Because I think last time you had planters, I think you did for, individual gardens, or you had some greenscaping area. And if you don't, as an amenity, you can consider maybe a community garden somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, not to speak on Ed's behalf, but there are some places back behind the community center in some of the lower lying areas that are still open that we're looking at adding additional amenities, being a potential garden or a bigger playground area, soccer field, something along those lines, just because it's a flat grass area that's going to be there. In the whole entire development, we have areas that come out to be green space. So we do have a lot of green space. We don't on this plan have any shrubbery or anything like that shown. Typically along the buildings and around the buildings, there will be some plantings, but of the total lot 2, 18.16 acres, we actually have over 13 acres of green space out of the 18 acres. So there is going to be quite a bit of tree area and green grass area within the development.
So I think, commissioners, that may be one thing you could add if you want to consider approval of this is, development of that additional flat area for some dedicated, amenity, whether it's a soccer field or a community garden or something like that. I think that would enhance the, that's kind of the purpose of the PUD for consideration. I do have one question for you that I think I recall coming up. Since these are 2-story units, are these sprinkled unit or is that not required for development? How does that work? I know that's probably a question that'll come up at Board of Aldermen.
Right. The A units are units that are stacked on top of each other. So the A units will have to be sprinkled per your city code. The B and C units are more townhouse style units. So it's more of a single family attached.
Got
so they're 2-story individuals. So those do not require to be sprinkled. They just have to have a 2-hour firewall.
Okay. All right. Great. And you are as part of the PUD dedicating that 13.19 acres as green space, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
What about trash enclosures? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say I have nothing else to say, and I said something.
I was just wondering where trash enclosures might be and how are you going to treat those? What will those look like? Will they be in some sort of something with a door that you're not going to see dumpsters with trash flying all over like we have in some areas?
Well, what we would do right now, if you look at the end of most of the stub streets, the little square boxes are our trash enclosures. Typically, we just do a concrete pad with the dumpster on there, but what we've also done in the past is just a 3-sided vinyl fence. Anytime I've ever put a gate on one, it's been either destroyed by the tenants or by the actual trash company themselves. So we usually just do a 3-sided vinyl enclosure.
When you say vinyl enclosure, like a privacy style fence, or
yeah, like a 6-foot tall vinyl privacy fence.
And you could obviously add the enclosure requirements if you wanted to as a condition as well.
It's not a bad idea, Chris. This is Eric, about those enclosure requirements, because I mean, there's a lot of dumpsters, you know, that are taller than 6 foot, especially ones that are placed in apartment complex, just speaking from personal experience.
So we could recommend approving this conditional upon trash enclosure, the brick elevation being approved by alderman, if someone wanted a soccer field like Chris had mentioned, and the lighting.
Can I add something to that? We had a couple recommendations from staff.
Okay.
The sewer line that's by building 7, we asked that extend all the way over to the property line on the east side, and then have a 20-foot easement from the end of the property line down to AA, so that way we could do any additional, if we needed to add additional line or connect to that, we'd be able to. And then also the staff recommends that the water line connects to both the main on the North Service Road and makes a complete loop over to Highway AA. So it would come all the way across to AA.
Ed, do you guys have any comments on those recommendations?
As far as the sewer line, I mean, basically, are you asking for the line to be extended, or are you asking for an easement to the east?
Asking for the line to be extended, but then an easement along that east side down to the service road so that we could connect there in the future.
Okay, I mean, that's something that I had to discuss with Ed. One of the reasons why we stopped the sewer line where it was is because of what we're expecting to be an issue with some grading there that will probably end up being in rock as we go farther to the east. So hammering out or blasting out, most likely in this case, be hammering out rock to get it past his unit, you know, is going to be additional expense to get the sewer no farther than what he needs it right now. But I can talk to Ed about that and see his feelings on that. As far as the water line, we feel that looping the water line like we did does provide a continuous flow of water, so we always have a fresh loop. If we would have to connect all the way underneath the existing 2 sanitary sewer lines and go through the channel, I mean, that would be something that would be quite a big undertaking, especially since we're trying to avoid going into the channel at this point. That would require multiple additional permits through federal permitting and state permitting. And that's something that we can discuss, but that one there seems like the additional, I mean, the current water line already runs across the frontage and is at AA right now, if I understand correctly. So providing another connection over by AA, I don't know what the additional
I'm not familiar where that line connects at. If it's a separate supply, so you actually get a separate supply in case something happened to the main that was running along AA, that I'm not sure of. I'm just going upon a recommendation that was submitted to me. I can do further research on that to make sure that they're not connected to the same main and that there's no issues or concerns, because I see you did loop down, but you looped down on the same main. So if there was an issue with that main and we have an issue as far as fire service, because I know we're putting a sprinkler system in, then we could have a concern there. So that's why it was brought up to connect to a separate main.
Yeah, maybe some additional investigation into the interconnecting of the mains along AA. If we could look into that and see if there's some kind of compromise that we can come up with on that.
Okay.
Well, I think what we can do with that is, I mean, I would imagine, Neil, you got that from Public Works Department, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think what we could do is work with the Public Works Department to come up with a recommendation for the sewer line location and easement and the water line loop location. And we can take a look and, with your engineer and speak with our Public Works Director to see what is proposed and what, possibly can be worked out with regards to that. Sound good?
Okay.
Okay.
One more clarification. So this development is 21.68 acres and you have 13 acres of proposed green space. Is that correct?
Lot 2 is the PUD development, and lot 2 is the 18.16 acres.
Okay.
And the common ground / green space is the 13.09 acres. So 13.09 out of the 18.16.
Okay.
And in the office building, the community building, will that be staffed at all times?
No, it'll be by appointment only. We'll have somebody there probably half the time.
Is there going to be a card reader? You said you had a laundry facility. So is it going to be a key punch or something so they could get in to use the laundry facility?
Right now, at my other facility in Washington, we just leave it unlocked. We have security cameras in there, but we just leave it unlocked.
Okay.
And this is a non-subsidized place, correct?
Correct.
But in the future, that could always change pending the world economy, or could that change possibly with unknown factors in the future?
Yeah, I mean, the residents and the rent values, I think it's reasonable to ask what are the proposed rents. I will say that in the last several years, we've had 2 of the low income housing tax credits apartments. I think the last 2 apartment buildings that have been built in the city that have been constructed. And I know that one of them is transitioning out, has been sold and transitioning out. And I think the rents are pretty similar to what Ed is. So I would imagine, at least the foreseeable market will drive probably rents consistent with what they're proposing. That's probably the need. Commissioner Blondin, you probably know better than anybody what rents are there, but it could always be subsidized.
Anything below 800, it's really hard to find anything under 800 for anybody.
They could always be subsidized, but I don't, that's not really a driving factor for consideration of the PUD. So I think you have to basically assume, yes, it could be any.
Could be.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a little green space out in front along the roadway.
I guess, Ed, that made him really mad. He left.
But
He just asked for some trees, Ed.
He was just getting a scale so we could measure.
Everybody loves Bradford pears.
Right now, between the actual edge of the road and our buildings, we have about 100 feet of green space.
Is it going to be landscaped or is it going to be just grass?
Well, we can't really get in MoDOT's right of way and plant trees, but there will be trees in between the buildings to kind of create a sound buffer for the buildings also.
So maybe one of the things you guys, Ed, I think you did this on Orange Blossoms, can provide for Board of Aldermen is a basically a concept landscape plan to show those trees. I think that'd be really helpful. I know it's not required, but I know I think we did that on Orange Blossom. When
I think we did too.
Yeah, there was some questions on the green space. I think that's a great point. And the only other comment I'll make is, we are going to try to squeeze a sidewalk out of you if you haven't realized that yet, to put in there. So, we want to make sure. I think with Orange Blossom, we made you put the sidewalks in, right?
I just had to give an easement along 47 for the sidewalk.
All right, that may have been what it was because we were working on that project. So, so if you can provide some concept and maybe it would be, feasible to consider some landscaping near the entrances. Are you considering that? Maybe you can put that on your concept plan.
Yes. Yeah, we always do that anyway with some nice signage, so we can add that on there. That's easy.
I just have one more comment. Your Orange Blossom project, I think it's a great project. This project looks like it's also a great project. The only problem I have is the location, and I just think it's too close to the highway, and with the fact that it's going to be a lot of families and kids and everything else, that's my biggest concern. Otherwise, that's my last comment. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions before we entertain a motion?
Hi, this is George Heath. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say that I'd just like to compliment these folks for working with us, though, because they've come into our community with the other Orange Blossoms and so forth and been a good neighbor to help us improve our so forth. And at least we know what we're getting as far as the developer that we're working with. And I appreciate you guys, and thanks for working with our city.
There was someone else that wanted to make a comment also.
Hi, this is George Heath. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead, George.
Oh, sorry. The recommendation of the sewer extension, I think, is a big plus on this. If you move forward with this sizable project, I think that the infrastructure on the outskirts of this property should be definitely tried to be connected to as much as possible. I just can't see where I personally own that piece of property that's to the east of it for 20 years. We have been in front of the board 2 times trying to get city sewer to the building. It's a 12,000 square foot commercial building. So if the project is moved forward, I think infrastructure is a must. I mean, the taxes that building is paid over the 20-year plus time when we still don't have sewer, I think it has to be a must. That's all I got.
Thank you, George.
Can I add one thing about the sewer?
Sure.
Okay. Chris and I were just talking, if and we can add this on the next plan for the board, but instead of coming north of Unit 7 and heading east, we would like to either look at coming back between buildings 11 and 13 or the sewer line between 10 and 11. I feel that would be a lot easier line to put in. And I think George, if you're still on, I think it would help you out a little more also, because I believe your property falls north to south. So you could sewer more of that property the further north we went with the sewer main.
I agree.
And that would probably be something that could be worked out with the city
With Public Works, yes.
Public Works Department with Guy or whoever.
Mr. Gavers?
Yes, Mr. Gavers. Any other comments or questions? Well, then I would entertain a motion to approve Creekside Apartments PUD 68 contingent upon the developer and the owner working out the sewer line by Building 7 extension and the water line connecting to the main on the North Service Road across Highway AA with the Public Works Department, along with some sort of drawings for a privacy fence 6 feet around the trash enclosures, a lighting drawing, and a concept landscape plan for the Board of Aldermen meeting.
I think we had one more, and that was.
Was there one more?
Development of the additional amenity green space behind the clubhouse. I think that was the last one I had, Commissioner Blondin.
Okay, add that. Was there anything else to that? I guess the alderman could think about a soccer field or some sort of space for kids to play. They could still add recommendations too.
Sure, absolutely. This is a recommendation, and I think Ed, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, I guess. I have no problems with any of the requirements that Ms. Blondin just went through. I guess the only question is I'm not so keen on the water line idea. I think that could really be a major problem.
Well, I think what the recommendation is not the water line as recommended by the planning and zoning director, was to basically work that out with the Public Works Department.
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't agree to it now. And
No,
then
you didn't
agree to agreeing to it now. Okay.
No, just working it out with someone that knows what they're doing, not me.
Okay.
That's a motion. I can second it.
Who was the first? Was that Stacy Blondin?
I made the motion.
Okay, and who was the second?
Mike Cooper.
Okay. All right, motion by Mrs. Blondin, second by Mr. Cooper. Roll call vote. Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Deach?
No, I'm concerned about the density.
Mr. Cullum?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
No.
Mrs. Blondin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
No.
So motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5-3. Okay.
I don't know what to do now. Do I call?
Oh, so the next
Call
time,
it?
sorry, let me go to the agenda again. Sorry.
I think we're at the end.
Yeah, Planning and Zoning Officers Report, Neil?
All right, so all I have, I've got 3 items coming up for the July meeting. So we'll have the handicap services site plan review. We'll have the Lewis Family Garage, which is going into the old glass shop at 907 East Veterans Memorial. And then we'll have the Cat 5 Construction Services, which is wanting to go into the old car store at 1203 East Veterans Memorial. That's all I have right now.
What date will that be though?
That is going to be on, that is for July 2nd.
Okay. Ooh.
This is Rich Taylor. I'd just really like to thank everybody behind the scenes here that got this thing together so quickly and actually made it work. I think there are some things we can look at to smooth the actual functionality of it, but golly, it worked.
Somebody's playing video games.
All right, we need a motion to adjourn.
Wait, I got one more thing to say. I'd like to thank Stacy, and you look awful good in that chair, girl. So thank you
Oh,
for covering
hey.
for me tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, I need to know who made the motion to adjourn. Who was first?
I made a motion, but I don't know whether I was first or not.
You were first.
All right, who wants to second?
I'll second.
Mr. Cooper, so we have a motion by Mr. Deach, second by Mr. Cooper to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are so adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.